A very strange UFO report was made in 1954 from Denmark, a country which was among those heavily plagued by strangeness in the immediate wake of World War II. On the 4th of May 1945, just 14 hours before the end of the war in Europe, a 13-year-old schoolboy in Fra, Jutland, observed 3 Allied Mustangs fly over a German radar station when on his way home from school. As he looked and waved at the planes, German anti-aircraft guns opened up on the planes, which responded by shooting back. One of the planes crashed in a field, with the pilot surviving. It was then the boy claimed in a letter sent in 1997 to a UFO researcher that he saw a large grey hat-shaped object hanging in the air nearby, which he took to be a German secret weapon. It began to move away from the planes in a south-southwesterly direction, and did so with a speed comparable to the jets. The researcher, Peter Davenport, delved into the event and managed to locate and interview one of the RAF pilots from that day, who confirmed the story, including the UFO. The pilot observed it accelerate away from its hanging position. He had heard stories from other pilots of strange craft in the wartime sky, but they were mostly glowing lights at night. Of the other 2 pilots, one could not be traced, and the other had been murdered in Kenya in the 1950s. Before UFOs were called flying saucers, they were called ghost rockets. Reports of thousands of strange missiles were reported, mostly from Nordic countries, in particular Sweden, although the skies of other nations were also invaded in 1946. The first report seems to have come from Finland in February of that year, although the peak for sightings was in the summertime, principally August. Although some of the strange objects were meteors, others were seen to be grey metallic rockets with fins. Many were seen to crash into lakes and submerge, but none were ever retrieved, at least that the military would admit to. Captured German V-1 and V-2 rockets being tested by the Soviet Union or other governments was considered a likely explanation, but as nothing was ever recovered, that idea remains unproven. American generals Doolittle and Sarnoff visited Sweden that summer on what was said to be private business, but documents released 50 years later showed they had been briefed by the Swedish military on the situation. In September, ghost rockets were also being reported from Belgium, Portugal, and especially Greece. They were seen in Thessaloniki and Macedonia. A scientific investigation began, which ruled out ballistic missiles, but before they could make any further determinations, the army, after conferring with foreign officials, ordered the investigation to cease in 1947. Denmark was one of the nations which was overflown by these mysterious rockets. One is said to have crashed on farmland in North Jutland in August 1946. The rockets continued to be seen in other places. One was seen by a number of people 30 miles off the coast of Perth, Western Australia, on the 1st of January 1949, but gradually the saucers became the dominant shape. The Barbados Advocate in 1950 reported that an elderly couple in Jutland reported seeing a saucer-shaped object with a yellow band around it appear from the southeast on the 14th of February. Then on the afternoon of the 15th of May 1950, Ove Peterson was on his way home in the afternoon when he suddenly saw 2 flying saucers in the air. As he watched, one of the craft landed in a field near him. It was approximately 25 feet in diameter. A lid opened and the occupants emerged. They seemed to be human, and all very beautiful, both men and women. One of the group produced an instrument which was apparently a type of camera. The visitors took 3 photographs of Peterson. Other reports of interactions with strange visitors have mentioned photographs being taken. He was shown the colour images in 3 minutes. While Polaroid instant photographs had been introduced in 1948, most people would have been familiar with traditional film, which needed to be processed in a photo lab. While some of the crew busied themselves digging up plants and flowers which were collected in small boxes, those studying Peterson proceeded to measure him. Peterson said the being smiled the whole time. even when they began to rob him. Without asking permission, they took a book he had under his arm, his watch, fountain pen, and even his wallet. Having gathered their hoard, they retreated to the saucer. With a rushing sound like a small jet engine, the craft disappeared, leaving a burnt spot in the field and a bemused witness. Peterson showed the burnt area to friends, but nobody believed his story, so he stopped reciting it. Somewhat ruefully, he said, "I never heard from those space people again." Peterson wrote down the account of his encounter, which passed into the hands of his friend of 20 years, an antique dealer named Harold Hagenby, who released it to the public when Peterson died in 1954. Maybe somewhere in a space museum, the photographs of an astonished Dane and his stolen property is on display for the amusement and enlightenment of others.